You're listening to Dramas Over Flowers with Saya, Anisa, and Porma. This episode was originally recorded in the middle of 2022 during a live stream event where we spoke about writing in Korean dramas.
So I think we really need to acknowledge the elephant in the room, or like the biggest K-drama writer in K-drama history, pretty much, Kim Yoon-suk.
I think Kim In-suk is the perfect way to start our conversation about endings, don't you think?
Yeah, actually, sure.
Aren't we always talking about her?
Even when we're not talking about her, we're throwing shade on her. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I mean, I agree. She has now become like the punchline for any K-drama trope thing that we talk about. But what I find most interesting about Kim Yoon-suk as a writer is how blasé she is about being like the grandmaster of trope creation, and how she just sticks to it because she's like, hey, this is the formula that works. You don't have to like me for it, but you go watch my dramas, don't you?
Honestly, I have to respect her game. Even though I talk crap about her a lot, I really have to respect her game. And you also have to respect the fact that she's been making these like huge hit dramas that were like breaking records and basically like getting the whole country, back when that was actually a thing, getting the whole country to sit down and watch her shows every week since like the early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken. Like, this woman has done a lot in her career. And so like I have to give her props for that, even though like I do think that as time goes on, she's getting lazier and kind of, resting on her laurels a little bit. But, I mean, maybe she has the right to do that at this point. Yeah.
To be fair, though.
She's made enough money?
Yeah, sure, that. But also, I didn't finish watching Mr. Sunshine, but what I had watched had excellent writing. And then
It had the makings of epic.
And apparently it did stick the landing, even though it was tragic, which is so not my flavor.
I didn't know that.
I mean, now you
Thanks
know.
for ruining it, B.
Yeah, for a drama that you're never going to watch.
I tried and I planned to.
Thanks, Anisa.
But yeah, Lee Byung-hun, I really can't with him. I'm sorry.
Okay, but the thing is that the story itself had really amazing reviews for the accuracy of the feeling of the time, if not exactly the details of history, though even the details of history were done really well, which was credit to the directorial team and not just the writer. But I think the reason we soured off Kim Yoon-suk so much in the last few years is because of The King, Eternal Monarch, because
I thought we liked that.
I didn't.
I mean, we did like that.
I thought Parma and I did. She's betraying me now.
I liked it the way I liked, again, My Life in the first 8 episodes. Okay. While I was watching it, I was like, oh, yay, so pumped. And then a moment of reflection was like...
but it's not a drama you'd watch again. Yeah. Had a really good OST, though.
Really good OST, completely. Also, damn, the visuals. I mean...
Damn. I was watching because it was just so yeah.
Pretty.
And Udo-hwan. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. So finish your point about why you've soured on her, because I have maybe slightly different or maybe the same points about why I've soured on her over
possibly.
time. But I want to hear
her writing has become more languorous, and you kind of see that in The King Eternal Monarch. Like, she's super self-indulgent. And here is where the lack of...
the J.K. Rowling problem.
Exactly
I don't think it's phoning it in. I think it's the lack of any critique that you take seriously. Kim Yoon-suk has reached a level where she no longer hears, or I don't think anybody dares tell her that, hey, this
isn't gonna
maybe
work.
cut down like 90% of this, because that's like a redundant storytelling.
Maybe it only needs to be 60 minutes, not 90.
Right. When you're too successful too quickly, that sometimes happens. I think it happened to M. Night Shyamalan too, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Sixth Sense director.
I completely agree, but also I will not. I'm personally offended that you're comparing Kim Yoon-suk, who has a level of credibility that M. Night Shyamalan just does not. That man has one, maybe two projects to his name that it's somewhat okay, and then he just, okay,
not in the quality of their work, but he got to a point where he thought he was such a genius because of his overnight success that he no longer listened to anyone, and he just did what he wanted, and that's just a bad place to be as a creative person. For me, I do agree that that's a problem with her work, but for me, the problem that has been kind of creeping up on me for longer and has been kind of bothering me more and more over time. And I noticed this so I feel like City Hall, which she wrote in 2009, is my favorite drama of hers. I love it more than Goblin. I think it's in many ways a perfect drama. And it was also very, very ahead of its time. And I think because it was so ahead of its time, it didn't maybe do as well as she was hoping, or it didn't do as well as her other dramas had. And it was the drama of hers that had the most fully realized female character. It was actually really about the female character, even though she had a great hero, as she always had. And it had incredible dialogue between the two of them, and it was like just such a beautiful development of a relationship that really felt equal. And I think she basically, after that, because of whatever reason that didn't do as well, she basically said, I'm never going to write another drama like that again. And in general, since then, her dramas have just been very unbalanced, in that it always tends to be about this amazing hero who has a great character and like so many interesting things about him, and the women just inevitably take second fiddle to that, and so like that has been just like a consistent theme. Like not all of them are the same, but I felt this very strongly in A Gentleman's Dignity. I felt this very strongly in Secret Garden. The King, I dropped after 2 episodes because I hated it, so I can't really speak to that. Goblin, as much as I really loved it, it had similar problems for me. Descendants of the Sun, I just found it to kind of collapse in the second half personally. But that's my issue with her. It's like over time, the heroines have just gotten sidelined, and that's just become like her thing. And I'm just not down with that.
The interesting thing about Kim Yoon-suk's heroines is that no matter how intelligent they become, no matter how independent they become, the hero just proportionally becomes even more overpowered. They just become deities, walking deities, because you can't make the man any smarter.
Literal deities. Yeah. Yes, exactly. And she has this tendency to kind of always go back to those sort of regressive gender dynamics that she's been writing since like the 1990s, because maybe that's just kind of
because it's a formula,
the era that she's from, and what she kind of feels, that what feels natural to her in relationships between men and women. Maybe that's just what it is, and that's what she writes.
That could very well be it, but also because her audience still demands that from her, because like all her interviews about her own writing basically hammer on that point that, yes, I know that there is like a power differential. Yes, I know that the Cinderella and Prince story is so old school, but my audience still wants it. So I keep writing it. She has also said that I sometimes want to write something different, but I also don't like the idea that my next drama will not be as big as my last drama. Like, come on, give this woman like all the awards for just like really being straightforward.
I mean, I guess
also, just one. I'm just gonna again repeat what Abdul is saying, because that was also a point I wanted to make. Is that Kim Yoon-suk gets the credit for some of the biggest gateway dramas, the international gateway dramas, Descendants of the Sun, Secret Garden, and Heirs. Yeah, absolutely, Heirs, and also The King. The King got like even before the pandemic wave of new K-drama viewers started coming out. As soon as The King hit Netflix, a fresh wave of K-drama viewers started coming into the fandom. That was not because of the lockdown, that was the beginning, so to speak. But yeah, so she writes dramas that transcends. Like it's not just for the domestic audience, it transcends international taste, so to speak, and kind of taps into that primal human cultural bias that feeds some of our most toxic viewing practices. So
yes. And I think another really interesting thing about her, before I know we said we were going to get into endings. Sorry, y'all know we had talked too much.
Anissa said it. I did not commit to that.
Well, I mean, I would love to spend the whole day with y'all, but what was I going to say? Yes. Another interesting thing about Kim In-suk is that a lot of drama writers have trained under her and have gone on to do really interesting things because they kind of learned the whole playbook from the master, kind of, and then they took it and they kind of played around with it. So I feel like a really good example of this is the screenwriter of Run On, Park Ji-hyun, who, like, as I was watching Run On, I could recognize some of the elements of the Kim In-suk playbook, right? You have this main couple, and then you have a secondary couple who kind of is in the same universe and has connections to the main couple, but they have their own story. And the two of them are never really, you never really have like a second lead who's competing for, I mean, even if it's like hinting at that, but he's never actually, or like there's never really exactly. There's no threat there. It's just kind of a nod to the idea of the second lead. And then, yes, as you mentioned, Saya, the dialogue. And I actually feel like Park Ji-hyun took that magical dialogue that Kim In-suk, in my opinion, was much better at 10 years ago. And she even took it to like another level, but you could kind of see the DNA of that training in that show. So I think that's very interesting.
Well, one of the things with like Kim In-suk's like tropalicious writing is, I mean, ratings are king. At the end of the day, you write for ratings.
Yeah.
So if the trope soup is what people want, then your job is just to make it as entertaining as possible, even if you personally do not subscribe to that kind of relationship. I don't know what her personal beliefs are, but like, if it's going to bring in the ratings, do it, right? I can see that informing the way that a star writer would write not even just a star writer, any writer, because you can only write your next drama if you can get your current one to perform well enough for someone to hire you to do the next one.
Exactly. Yes. And yeah, I mean, that's their job, just as our job as critics is to criticize. And that's what we do. Yes.
Oh, and a final thing about Kim In-suk before we talk about the other stuff is she's actually really open to legitimate critique, unlike, let's say, the writer of W, whose name, like,
Sung
guys, we were just talking about her, Sung Ji-jung. She is not so cool with you critiquing how she does her dramas. Like, do you guys remember towards the end of W?
Yes.
When everybody was like...
She was very salty about that criticism.
She was like,
that one interview
you guys just so did not get what I was doing.
We got it. We didn't like it.
It was so condescending. It was basically like, I'm a genius and you all don't understand my genius.
Oh, maybe it was her way of saving face. Who knows? But what I wanted to ask you is that, so here's the thing, because we mentioned J.K. Rowling, and I don't think neither of you have read like Sarah J. Maas, Throne of Glass series. Parma, have you? You haven't. She's like, I'm not listening to
sorry, I was reading the comments. The Sarah J. Maas series, I read the first book. I just couldn't after that.
Okay, so one of the critiques that she sort of frequently gets is that she falls, like, it becomes clear as the series goes on that she's fallen in love with a particular character. Do you think like Kim In-suk does that? Like, you've fallen in love with your character and you can no longer write a good story because you're too emotionally like connected, like what is the word? Enmeshed. You're too emotionally enmeshed in your character's existence that you are no longer capable of making it like an objective decision about how you write that story. And I do feel that comes up in, I think Sung Ji-jung does do that. Not necessarily with her characters. For her, it's her concept. And I think when Kim In-suk does sort of mess it up, I think The King is the probably the best example of this. And I don't necessarily think it's true of her previous dramas, but certainly in The King, there was this level of self-indulgence of just like lingering shots. And actually Hotel del Luna, but that was with the whole aesthetic, which is why I couldn't bear to watch that in normal speed. Like, I loved it. I really did. And that wasn't her. That was the Hung sisters. But the falling in love with your own work actually isn't good for your work. Like, you need to maintain a professional distance from your work so it can be the best work. Or if you do fall in love with your work, make sure you have a good editor who you listen to. So, yeah. That's all my point there. Now we can talk about endings. Although that kind of is about endings, though, I do think.
I think it is. And go ahead, Borma.
A point that just occurred to me, because we were talking about ratings a second ago. Ratings rules every television industry, movie industry, but especially television industry. With K-dramas, I don't think writers can just peddle slime and just like have like a few high moments and still get the really high rating. Whereas with, I'm sorry to like crap on an industry right now, but like even though I love some of their dramas, Chinese drama industry sometimes does. If they see that the producers see that one formula is working, they will quickly churn out like 19 more dramas, just stuffing it with like big name, pretty actors and try to get as much money out of it as they can. And no matter how silly the concept is, some of these have like really high ratings. And it's not like they're not discerning viewers. They are. The writing is very like minutely discussed in their web. But it would simply never get that kind of rating in South Korea. And I don't know at what point or how the viewers became relatively more discerning about the quality of writing. Even in their melodrama, like even in something like Penthouse, they require a certain amount of competence. Like I think the highest rated drama, one of the highest rated melodramas is probably Sky Castle. And like just that is the level of drama that writers aspire to. And that was like a national phenomena. And I'm sorry to say, but like some of the best writing in Indian movie industries, because we have so many of them here, simply would never reach that kind of success across the country. One of the best, like the masters of writing really good movies is probably Malayalam movie industry and not the Hindi movie industry, which is what the rest of the world knows. And their movies are excellent, and some of them are so well written, and they would not be seen by like 99% of the nation ever. It's that axis where you write something great and it's seen by every household. They tune in every single week. I don't know at what point that happened. And I think that has a high level of influence on why the writing is so often really good, like by the good writers. I'm not saying K-dramas are all great. Or clearly we complain about K-dramas like every episode.
Yeah.
Do you think that is a question of scale, though? I mean, if you think about the size of the Chinese and Indian audiences, like you're talking about you're talking about like
even within
enormous
the same nation
markets, whereas like Korea is like this big, so they're not writing to as many people or creating as many like products. I guess the word I want to say is chakbum. Is product the right word?
I get what you're saying. Apologies for the dog barks in the background.
Is that what it was?
I get what you're saying.
I was like, why is she muting herself? She's telling me to be quiet.
It's been happening throughout our recording.
I haven't noticed at all.
So I would agree that's probably true of Chinese drama because they have such a huge number of people tuning in. However, I'm not so sure that works with like comparison of the Indian viewership, because the Indian television viewership is a very different mass market from the Indian subscription viewership, like different in terms of levels of education, socioeconomic levels, just levels of exposure, and what kind of daily grind these segments of the population go through. And if you look at just the subscription population, having access to some of like the writers of the highest quality, something like The Great Indian Kitchen, if anybody can, you can see it on Netflix.
Is that like
watch it if you can?
British Bake Off?
Nothing like it. It's a domestic story, and it is insanely good. But I won't go into it. Anything I say is a spoiler. However, if writing like that has to happen, the writer needs to get paid really well, and they only get paid that well in a web drama. And that is only seen by a tiny population, a tiny fragment of the Indian society, which is not even comparable to the access K-dramas have to their domestic audience, where like, listen, the fact that South Korea does have a 97% literacy rate does feed into, for instance, their knowledge of literature, folklore, the quality of writing expected from their even everyday melodrama is higher.
I want to acknowledge Abdul's comments that I wonder if the quality of K-drama writing we see is a bit of a smokescreen because we are seeing a very select subsection. As foreign viewers, we often do not see the massive failures of Korean cinema and drama. We're getting a curated list that international distributors think are good enough to get rated. The average Korean viewer perhaps sees more instances of poor production, rushed writing, etc. We often only see what has already been judged the cream of the crop. And I agree with that. And I also want to add on to it that there's a lot of, for example, daily dramas get pretty high ratings, and they are, not distributed internationally because they're basically, we always get annoyed when people describe Korean dramas as soap operas. But those are the soap operas of Korean TV, right? And like American soap operas, like a lot of people just have them on in the background while they're, doing their laundry and they do have really high ratings. And most of them are crap. I'm sorry to say, it's just the same, we talk about in Urdu, we'll say sas bahu. It's very petty domestic disagreements, a lot of filler, a lot of very low quality writing.
Yeah.
Kimchi slaps. Exactly. So it's a totally different, and we don't even talk about those. And a lot of times we also don't talk about weekend shows. Occasionally we will, but these are, the longer running family dramas that air on weekends. Those have really good ratings, and those tend to be really good launching pads for actors as well. And people get popular there, but those don't necessarily have the kind of writing that we talk about a lot on the podcast.
I should have started my theory by saying that when I'm talking about K-dramas, I am literally talking about the web K-dramas that are accessible to us. And you're not wrong, Abdul. That is probably the cream de la cream, because the producers know that this is quality that's good enough to send out abroad.
It's export quality, right?
Export quality, and not just to Western audiences or South Asian audiences. Their first export was always East Asia, other East Asian countries. And does it work with other East Asian countries? And a lot of daily soaps simply would never have worked with, let's say, Malaysia, Thailand, and any of those countries. But that's exactly what I'm saying. The K-dramas that we review the most are the exported K-dramas, and if let's say 14 K-drama, because that's the general number of 16 to 20 episodes that come out, right? So let's say anything between 15 to 20 dramas that are produced in a month, maybe 5 of them are written well, or maybe 2 of them are written well. That maybe is a higher rate. Maybe none of them are, but usually in terms of quality writing, you may not absolutely love the stuff, but you know that it's watchable. Even having 2 to 5 out of 20 written really well is a higher proportion than you find in almost most countries, the stuff that's coming out on the web.
Yeah, I feel like this also goes back to our earlier point where we were talking about sort of the sort of government subsidy of these dramas, and also this sort of idea of exporting it and the pressure that adds, and sort of the how that raises the audience expectations within the country.
One of the reasons K-dramas have the kind of money that they have is PPL, because you could see an uptick in production value around 2016 suddenly. And the reason for that was because PPLs were allowed the way they are right now. Advertising has always had a fraught relationship. Production companies wanted to properly advertise to earn money. Government was no, we are not letting you do that. You can have those images come up at the end of the dramas, hey, I have this product, here's a picture, that kind of stuff. But actual advertisement there was some real weird rules around it. But around the 2016 mark, 2014 to 2016 mark, they started changing a lot of loosening a lot of laws, but that was specifically laws connected to how PPL could be conducted. One of the things that they actually tightened around 2020 was the because it was getting ridiculous, the number of PPLs they would be stuffing in, and how the characters would be like, this is such good sandwich every 5 seconds with the king eternal monarch, like you have Lee Min-ho taking out like a packet of like preserved kimchi or something and being like, this tastes so good, in his alternate universe thing, I brought it from the other world.
Yeah.
It was getting ridiculous. So the number of commercials you could put in, those were regulated a little better. How much you could push a product changed. My point is that drama started doing PPLs out of a need to get money, but then they almost invented the best way to get money ever. You'd never had this way of doing product placement in other countries before K-dramas did it. And now international brands, because they know that these K-dramas have international eyeballs, are putting in PPLs in K-dramas so that not only domestic K-drama viewers watch it, but international audiences get to watch it, and they don't even have to pay any like exemptions or taxes to their own governments. Subway does it, has been doing it for years, where American audiences are watching Subway advertisements in K-dramas, and Subway sales are going up in America. So I'm bringing this on because this is another aspect of K-drama writing that writers have to use. You see that used in Be Melodramatic, how inventive writers have to be in putting in PPL, how much they hate PPL being part of the writing, and how much in the last episodes they stuff like 19 different products. Every other scene has, the heroine suddenly using 5 different products on her face in the middle of like a dramatic scene. And yeah, I just have to bring that up.
Kahi stick that I'm just like, I hate seeing now.
All right, final segment.
So-
Go, sir.
Well, I mean, it's kind of the second to last because we haven't quite answered the question that we were going to ask about, like, how do you take a story to, like, its rightful finish? And it's, like, for me, I think this is universal, but there are a couple of elements. First, like, the question that the drama sets up, it has to finish by answering them. Like, it has to pay off its conflicts. It has to solve its character conundrums. And if it doesn't do that, then it has failed. Like, the fundamental reason the drama exists hasn't worked. For example, Where Stars Land. Also, like Extraordinary Attorney Woo, and like any number of what do you guys think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think also just like we've talked about this before, but like betraying that contract with the viewer. I think another show that betrayed that contract is one that we talked about a lot last year, Dodo Soso La La Sol, which like, in what world was that ending coming for this drama? Like, it just doesn't make any sense for you to have planned that ending with the drama that they gave us for like 13 episodes. Like, it just made no... I am still baffled by where that came from in a show that, in tone, in premise, in tropes, in all the sort of unspoken and spoken signals that you give viewers in this particular formula, that was out of left field. And so like if you don't fulfill what you set up in the beginning, and B, if you betray that contract with the viewer, I think those are kind of the two main things for me. I guess the third thing is just not finishing your story.
That's true.
Sometimes they just don't finish the story.
Vagabond.
Yeah. It's just like, oh, we're really doing well. Sometimes it's that they didn't think it through properly. I found this happened with what was Itaewon Class, where it was really good, and then they sort of just lost the plot and it just collapsed. Or they get like too much hype and they want a second season, and they're like, oh, all the stuff that we were going to resolve at the end, we'll just push it to the second season, and so they just kind of leave it open.
A bunch of thrillers do that, like Missing Noir M, which is an old one, but totally unfinished story.
And also, we cannot not mention, because this is our first life, with the last 2 episodes completely lobotomizing our main character.
Yeah, another example I want to mention is Her Private Life, which just dropped the whole concept that we loved so much in the beginning of Park Min Young's fangirlhood, and how that kind of her life as a fangirl. It just took a total backseat. And not even just that, just anything that she had going on took a backseat to the man pain of, okay, yes, he was maybe the best male lead we've ever seen. He was perfect, but like still, everything just became about him in the end. His pain, his trauma, even her own family's trauma became like a servant of his family's. It was so, I was like, what? And then they just completely dropped that whole thing of like how she lives her fangirl life and how she balances it with her real life and how they interact in this weird way once her idol becomes her future brother-in-law. Nothing.
Yeah.
So that felt
unfulfilled.
Disappointing.
This is a drama I've never talked about on the podcast, but like Times, the Lee Joo Young drama, the one where she was finally a lead with Lee So Jin, like it was such an interesting concept. But like halfway through, it actually just became a different drama. Like it was this whole time thing where, you know, they were communicating with each other across time over 5 years, I think. But then midway through the drama, it just like it did this sort of heel face turn thing where it just became a political thriller, not the drama it started off as. It was just really weird. Like each of those stories by themselves would have been compelling, and that second half was interesting, but it wasn't the drama I signed up for. Like, this isn't what I came here to watch. It was really strange. But she was great.
Yeah.
Yoon was great.
Yeah. Liz mentions What's Wrong with Secretary Kim as another one where they just completely dropped the development of the female lead in favor of the male lead. Yes, absolutely agree.
We've about that as well.
Ranted about that for hours.
This tends to happen a lot with like Park Min Young's dramas. So I think that might be like a Park Min Young drama specific thing sometimes, but also more prevalent in the romantic comedy, romantic drama genre, where the concept starts as the woman's story, and then past the midway point, the story heavily becomes. So basically, the concept is the woman's story, but the climax is always the man's story, which if this was an X-rated podcast, that joke would just fly in a totally different direction. So sorry. The next segment.
Oh, dear.
Okay.
So
that's being recorded for posterity. I hope you know.
so finally,
yes.
what does
they do use the girl is simply there to help the toxic male lead find his humanity trope. That and the boys over flowers syndrome is a great name for that, Abdul.
Hila bamboozled us all?
So all right. So let's get to our like question and answer segment. So if you feel comfortable and you'd like to unmute yourself and put your video on, you don't have to. You can ask your question through the chat. If you'd like to speak, can you just raise your hand and we can call on you? That way we'll, have a good order. Let's get to questions or comments. If you have a comment, it doesn't have to be only questions. Well, we have a question from Joe. So yeah. Should I read it? So Joe asks, do you have any idea which tropes K-dramas invented, which then were picked up across Asian drama land? I'm wondering whether the Nuna, older woman romance, for example, started as a K-drama thing.
I don't think it started as a K-drama thing. However, it was definitely popularized in K-dramas. Like they normalized it. They treated the story as not taboo so much as people struggling to make it okay with their family and friends.
I was just going to mention like Talja Spring, which was from 2007. And it is definitely was, and I think still is, quite not stigmatized, but like it's not accepted as a social norm even now, I think anywhere. So I can imagine that would have been much stronger from that's the earliest Nuna drama that I can think of.
So for my feeling about Nuna romances is that, a romance it doesn't have a lot of plot. There's not a lot of meat to the plot of a romance, right? It's just they meet, they're interested in each other, there's some kind of conflict, they get together, they break up, they get back together. So you need something else. And I feel like, especially when Nuna romances first started, that was one of the things that kind of served as a conflict. In older dramas, you had the families, you had these in the 90s, you had these tragic multi-generational sagas where they were adopted siblings,
The
her father killed his father, or his father killed her father, or there was a lot of this kind of conflict that was like a big reason that they can't be together, and then they have to like overcome that. But then I think with Nuna romances, they were able to like have something that was slightly lighter, but still would be a large roadblock in any Asian culture. But like here, particularly, we're talking about Korean culture of like, and I think honestly, like globally, it's always been kind of a thing where the man is usually the older one in the relationship. And so then that brings in all of that, the family kind of being like, oh no, this isn't going to work. And you have all these sort of built-in conflicts. But the interesting thing to me is that like over the years, it's become less stigmatized in Korean society. And now a lot of times you'll see people on variety shows, and granted, these are celebrities, so they do live in like a different world than like regular people, but you'll see people being like, oh, like you have a younger husband, like good for you. There's a lightness to how people talk about it now, and it's more common. And I don't think that it's as stigmatized as it was like 10 years ago.
And even the prevalence of Nuna romances like has gone down in Dramaland. It's not one you see so much
because
anymore.
it doesn't present it's not such a huge conflict anymore. So now they have to have like serial killer romances or that's what I call them. It's like a romantic drama, but then like there's a serial killer plot line. Who knows why?
I think serial killers coming and like becoming part of the story is like it's definitely a K-drama thing that other Asian dramas adapted, since that was what Joe was asking. The other trope that is uniquely K-drama is possibly Truck of Doom. Definitely started there.
I was watching.
Started is what I'm saying. I'm pretty sure K-dramas came up with it first.
I was watching, I think, Life on Mars, which is from 2006 or something, but the original BBC one. And it's in older British shows as well, where they have them. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't know you had those in English TV.
That's interesting.
I was shook.
Yeah.
But about the Trucks of Doom though, our friend Anya, who's been a guest on our show several times, she wrote a very interesting piece about why the Truck of Doom exists and the function of it. Has an actual literary function, which is really useful. When you have somebody you need to get rid of someone in a way that doesn't reduce their dignity or integrity. So they can't, for example, die of a drug overdose or something like that. They have to be morally still intact, but you also have to kill them. So the Truck of Doom basically does away with the person you need to get rid of without marring their reputation. And young people, killing young people, they're not going to just die of old age, are they? You need a way to get rid of them.
Yeah, and even though it's very shocking in the context of the drama, vehicle accidents are a really big cause of mortality, in most societies. That it's just something that happens a lot.
Perhaps not as much as they happen in K-drama land. Let's hope.
Maybe not, but in certain age groups, dying in a car accident is the highest source of mortality, right? For some groups. So it's something that is not it's not like getting cancer and dying 2 days later, where that's probably
there's a limited number of things
probably
a 20-year-old can
exactly.
die of. So
yes, and dying in a car accident is one of them. Yes. Joe asks, what do each of you feel has been the best written drama of 2022? I'm going to pass this over to you guys first, because I haven't watched a lot of dramas.
I need my watch list in front of me, and it's on my other computer. I don't know what I've watched right now.
I have a few off the top of my head. 2521 would probably be, for me, the best written drama till now, with the way the character development over time happened. Again, listen, when I say the best, there are flaws I can start talking about right now, but why should I? We're talking about the quality of writing. And definitely, probably one of my most favorite of this year. I had really loved the beginning of A Business Proposal because it felt so subversive, but I wouldn't say it's the best written, especially how the drama developed after episode 6. But it just needs mentioning how they blended the reference to an older drama within the drama. That was like a really neat trick. And that it just, those things are what makes drama watching worth it sometimes. Like, and also the fact that they had such a great female friendship. My Liberation Notes, I'm sure Anisa would agree, was something that is just uncommonly well written.
Yes. Yeah. That's like the only one that I've finished that I would say is the best of 2022. But I just want to like dramas I haven't finished whose writing I really did enjoy it so far is sorry, my mind 2521. I agree. Also, Our Beloved Summer. I think that counts as 2022. I think it might have started in the previous year, but it finished in 2022. Also, Little Women is really good so far. I know I haven't only watched 2 episodes, but the writing is strong. So those I would say, although I haven't finished.
I would
them.
Also put in Tomorrow, even though like the framework itself doesn't seem so intense at first. The individual cases that they deal with were heartrending, and it's really hard to have a light drama do heartrending in an episodal manner, and still like really, it never felt like they treated it lightly. And they treated it with like the correct level of sincerity and earnestness. And that is a power of writing. So maybe, like there is My Liberation Notes kind of writing where you delve into individual, like a small group of people and their pain. And then you have writing like Tomorrow, where you take larger societal issues and like create small stories out of it and really make it pathos driven. And both are like really, they resonate with you. Hey, Abdul, you have something to say. Do you want to come online?
Yes.
Like, wait.
Hey.
Hey guys. Yeah, I was just thinking of like an earlier question. I think it was who brought up the concept earlier that a drama can be bad on the DNA level of it, that it's almost like the core concept is bad. And it just made me think, what do you all think about, are there dramas that you think is there a difference between a drama that is good because of the performances, or that it's bad, but it's elevated by some of the performances?
As we were planning this episode, Anisa and I had this discussion about whether you could have a drama that was badly written, but was saved by either being well directed or well acted. And I think the conclusion that we came to in that discussion was that if it's written badly, nothing can save it, not even top-notch acting, because you can see the actors making the best of bad like lines, and it just doesn't save the drama, because if it's bad at that most basic level, there's just nothing that can, I don't know, make it good, because it's fundamentally flawed, like the premise is flawed.
I remember this interview with, oh my gosh, what's his name? The name of the actor, I'm looking it up right now, but like he gave an interview, and I remember he was filming a drama, or he had just finished a drama that you could tell he was kind of referencing that show without like actually coming out and saying it. Jung Il-woo, that's who it is. He did like Return of Il-jime, 49 Days. He was talking about how like at a certain point, if the writing doesn't give you as an actor, like if you can no longer understand anything that the character is doing, then even as an actor, like there's a limit to how much you can do, right? Like if you're being made to say these like nonsensical dialogue lines, or like the character is doing things that, like we've seen this happen so many times, right? And you just become lost. And he said, I just kind of lost my motivation for like, why am I even here? And you can kind of see it in their eye. Like they have this dead-eyed look where they're doing their best. And I think that maybe this question can be separated from is it still worth watching? Because I think sometimes you will watch a bad drama to the end for like one actor who's just doing such an amazing performance, even though the rest of the drama is garbage, but you're watching it for them. So I think like, even if it's a bad drama that can't be saved, Maybe your viewing experience can be saved. I think that's very like individual to the viewer.
I was talking about this with Barbara a few days ago, that I watched that show to the end because of the OST. There was that one song, which I realized later was like it's by Jin of BTS, and it's like huge, and it like hit Billboard charts at a very high number or whatever. But like that one song is such a beautiful song, and that is the reason I finished the drama. The drama itself, it was yeah, it was not the best drama. And like Joo Ji-hoon and Jung Ji-hyun, like neither of them could save that drama from its pitfalls. But Jin did.
I would add to that list Business Proposal, which is a drama that ended up showing such severe cracks in its writing. However, my affection for the actors, especially Kim Soo-jung,
yeah.
I had to finish watching it.
It remained. Yeah, exactly. She was
sparkling.
She brought life to that drama, and she never stopped trying, even when the drama itself didn't deserve it
there's always those shows where the actors are better than the roles than the drama or than the roles deserved. I mean, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but
I mean, actually, frequently. Right now, I just finished today's webtoon, another Kim Soo-jung drama. While I wouldn't say the writing was terrible, it definitely suffered in the second half. Like, it's a very dialogue-strong show. Like, the individual exchanges between some of the characters, especially the dialogue given to Kim Soo-jung, are really memorable and effective. However, really weak writing in the second half. But Kim Soo-jung and Chie Daniel they are actors with such strength of performance. It's not like they transcend the script, they are above it, but like they juice out the
they can
best
bring more
possible
out of
version.
it.
Yes. So then you can elevate a mediocre script and make it good, but maybe you can't take bad writing and turn it into good
exactly
drama.
And Nandamisa adds Cheese in the Trap. I completely agree with you. Cheese in the Trap was
100%.
not a drama that did itself justice. The actors, however, they tried really, really hard. And you could see that.
They really, you could tell. Yes. That was tragic in many ways. that whole drama production was
but then
tragic.
Park Hae-jin went on to like do the film version, and I don't know how that turned out, but like
it was okay. It was not that memorable. There was something just cracktastic about the first half of Cheese in the Trap, the drama, that just But again, a lot of the problem was with the production. So it's not specifically a writing fault. There is this thing that I want to bring in here. So Lei on Twitter had sent us this theory about, because we were talking about why dramas have this tendency of like, yes, breakups, in the final quarter of the story. We've discussed this before, like why the breakups happen, but also why does one of them have to like leave the country? So that was a discussion we were having on Twitter, and Lei pointed this out, and I because it was in relation to this live stream, bringing this up. She says that the Eastern media, like Eastern dramas, tend to be influenced by Kishoten Kesu's 4-act structure, which is sort of like derived from an ancient Chinese 4-line poem structure. And now this I've heard of before, the 4-line poems, each of which tend to follow like acts. And this is also what we were discussing before, Saya, about like the first being like the introduction, first quarter of the story.
I didn't know this was a thing. I thought I was being smart and figuring out.
you were being smart. You didn't have this information. The first act having like that whole introduction to the character, introduction to the plotline thing. The second, sort of like an acceleration of events. The third structure having your climax or twist. And then the fourth structure is where you, like, sorry, the
resolution,
fourth act. Right? Resolution, yes, but also it's like... they reconcile a lot of the things that
reconciliation
happens in Act 1 and 2. And this 4-act structure is very popular and very familiar to people in folklore as well. And that translates to drama writing, and key dramas are also influenced by it. Now, I thought that was a really...
I love that.
Was that on Twitter? Can you share the link with us somewhere?
I will.
Maybe in the next newsletter.
Joe has another comment. One of her favorite Korean dramas of this year was the web BL Cherry Blossom October. I have read that. It was favorite because on the surface level, it's a sweet romance with actual plot and characterization. Makes it a very creepy gothic horror, and I really wonder whether the writers knew that. You know what? I needed it pointed out to me later on that it was, well, it seemed like a very sweet romantic story about these adopted, siblings. I shouldn't say that. That makes it sound wrong. Two kids growing up in the same household, it's not related at all, developing feelings for each other. But it is reminiscent of a lot of gothic stories, which has that like kids growing up in the attic type of storyline. It had to be pointed out to me.
BC Andrews.
Yes. So
Flowers in the Attic. I had to mention that because that's a very BC Andrews.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Abdul also says sometimes an actor's popularity is a death knell for a drama. K2, for example, Ji Chang-wook, Song Yuna, and Jo Sung-ha can act circles around Yuna, but Jo Chung-ha can act circles around Yuna, but she's the heavy star, so gets ton of screen time. That's Sab's drama stole. Yes, agreed. Sometimes the weight of an actor can be too much for a drama. But usually that is not the case with a majority of the dramas. Though I would say Lee Min-ho, for instance. With dramas, I don't know what happens to this man. He becomes very top-heavy, where it's like nobody wants to like tell him which direction to go, and he just steers whichever way. And that definitely has an effect on the dramas he does.
The thing with Imino is, though, his hype is bigger than his ability. So that's also a problem there.
Yes, 100%. It's made him a worse actor over time, absolutely. In my opinion. I feel like he had more life and vigor and interest to him early in his career, and now I think he can't like overcome the weight of his own popularity.
But also perhaps he's like directors don't know how best to direct him.
Film directors do, though. They seem to have. I will watch Pachinko. I was
going to say, I think he is really good in Pachinko, and Pachinko is a totally different kettle of fish than most.
It's also directed by a film director, isn't it?
It's directed by a film director. It's directed by a Korean American director. He is also not playing the hero, which I think helps.
Yeah,
he needs to stop doing. Yes, I think he's so deliciously slimy and like ambiguous. And I mean, this is. I think I remember like putting this in our like group chat that like this is the greasy kind of self-important, nasty kind of character that like even though he's been needing to play for many years, and he's finally able to like stretch his acting chops in a way that he's like his typecasting in K-dramas hasn't allowed him to do, which is. Great to see.
And definitely the trappings of like the main lead of a K-drama, especially a romantic K-drama, tends to make it difficult for actors to perform in a natural way. They have to be like the slightly standoffish guy who's only vulnerable in front of the heroine in very specific moments. At all other times, they're in full control. It just diminishes their range of acting artificially, like externally, puts them in a box. You can see that with Lee Jong-suk in, let's say, Romance is a Bonus Book.
Imino just plays one type of hero, though. It's like...
I think he's been typecast, though.
But it's also... Yeah, he has been
typecast.
Yeah, that's basically it.
It's hard. It's also hard to know the behind the scenes of like how much of it is typecasting, how much of it is this actor only likes to play these kind of roles.
I mean, for example, in The King, he had some moments, and it's always his drama moments. Like, he should be a dramatic actor, not a romantic lead. And I think that is his sort of the best wheelhouse for his skills. Because his best moments in The King were when he was being the king. Like, that was when... the story got so interesting. His presence on the screen
and I couldn't stomach him for long enough to get there.
Unfortunately.
Sorry, sorry, not sorry. Borma, we had a bunch of questions on social media that were kind of like a collection of tropes that people don't understand.
Oh, I just want to quickly go through them.
So do you want to just like list those out? Yeah, those are fun.
So Iget Boy says... this particular trope, I love you, but never told you, but you can't love someone else because I said so, is a very, it male leads do that, but second male leads are renowned for doing this. Like, I have never told you, but like, how dare I not have your affection? But I suppose, yeah, male leads do it worse, where it's like an entitlement to the female lead's affection. Then you have this one. Sunita Job asks, why do so many mothers leave their kids in K-dramas? And why is the second lead sometimes better than the male lead? Valid questions. I think the parents leaving the kids thing is you know what? We need to put a pin on that because I want to read the others first. Okay. I know this is for the sake of dramas, but investigation and filling out penal cases in a couple of weeks, a trial sentence in a one day. It usually in the real world takes months or years.
Yeah, that is drama time.
Yeah, why do writers need to do that? Also, yeah, why? Why does a story only have to span like 4 weeks? Why can't it span 4 months? Why is it that the writing never allows it?
Because they don't want it to, I think.
Yes, but
like a lot of things happened in that time.
Yeah. Also about the pesky episode 14 breakup, why do K-drama writers think that the audience wants to see the romance of the second lead couple develop when the main leads are broken up? It often feels so filler and unnecessary. Example, Monthly Home Magazine, Doro Sol Sol Lala Sol. Did Doro Sol Sol Lala Sol have a second lead couple? I don't even remember that. And also,
I've wiped that drama from my brain.
Extraordinary Attorney Woo. This is actually true. Second leads do tend to have like a perk up, but I suppose that's because they are trying to make sure they keep the conflict going, like the tension going in a story. So this is kind of like okay. So there is this thing in writing where you have two parallel storylines going, so that when one is having a bit of a slump, you can do the meanwhile back in the ranch kind of storytelling, and there you take up the second thread and talk a little about that. So you let the first thread sort of have its like low moments.
Yeah. A plot and B plot.
But yes, they do tend to default to the second lead romance couples a lot. Currently watching Household Playlist, and it's just crazy to me. This is by Fly Rosify. It's just crazy to me that you've had these friends for decades, but you wouldn't share certain things that are bugging you. I guess a lot of my questions is like a game of, is it a cultural thing or is it a writing crutch? She's specifically talking about why supposedly best friends keep important things from each other in K-dramas. And yeah, that's true. Sometimes, you have these characters asking, but, more than K-dramas, I find this happening in C-dramas where your family or your friends would ask, hey, what's wrong? And the character inexplicably would just say nothing, where usually if you come back home and you just went through something horrible, you will just spill to your sister, your best friend. And that just doesn't seem to, that level of confidence doesn't seem to be shared between K-drama friends.
That's one of the writing problems, right? Where like drama logic has to apply when, say, there's something that's very solvable by just someone behaving in a way that they would normally behave, and they don't, and you have to watch that drama wondering, why don't they do that? That is a writing problem.
Because we have to fill a certain number of episodes. That's the only reason.
But
yes,
then you also
limited to K-dramas either.
You also have the dramas where they actually allow the characters to behave in a way that people would normally behave, right? One of the things that really gets me, and
that
this
requires better writing, though.
Yeah, exactly.
It also stands out. It stands out because it's uncommon. Usually, you just have characters just keeping everything to themselves and having these secrets from their families that don't actually need to be secrets. I'm sorry.
I mean, that's the mark of a good drama, where you're not thinking, well, why didn't they do that?
Right.
Why didn't you look when you crossed the street? Why didn't you? This is completely like not even related, but it just reminded me. Sometimes when you have characters that come into a room and there's something happening in the room, and when you walk into a room, the first thing you notice is the thing happening in the room, not the person. And they're staring at the person, and the person is like staring at the thing, and it takes them like 5 minutes to look at the thing, and you're like, that's not what you do in real life. You might glance at the person and then you'd immediately look at the thing, and you just say, it's so annoying.
But you added 2 extra minutes to the runtime, and that was what they were going for.
But it doesn't change the runtime. It's just an annoying
thing. It's the thing that we've brought up before of like the main character getting the main character treatment by the camera and the directing, and the, just in case you didn't know this person was the main character. Everything stops when he walks into a room. It's usually a man, of course. I wanted to read out a couple of these comments in the chat. So Joe said, things K-dramas keep trying to tell me about South Korea. Korea has a lot of horrific bullying, workplace harassment, legal and business corruption, and lots of groups of scheming, evil middle-aged men, and really excellent knitwear.
Do you know what? All of that is true. All of that is true.
Pretty accurate.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like K-dramas, as you were saying earlier, Nisa, is that how they're on trend, but they also very accurately reflect what the social conflicts of the time are. Like if, for example, after the Seoul ferry disaster, there were a lot of dramas that were, although they weren't like the storyline was not directly related, they would have like an emotional undertone that was deliberately like in honor of that grief. I can't remember what I'm thinking of right now. It was Black, no, or the drama After Black, one of those. But, you know, what they were trying to write to was the grief that people were feeling about government corruption, about corporate corruption. And dramas do that. I think out of every sort of country's, TV that I've watched, Korean dramas are the most critical of sort of government structures, of, you know, the corporate ruling classes, and they're like, nothing is off limits in K-dramas. And one of the things that I've not enjoyed exactly, but like have found very fulfilling even more recently is like their revenge dramas lately have actually allowed a different kind of revenge that didn't rely on like a corrupt legal system to get them justice. They're actually like, you know what, sometimes none of those things are going to work. And Tomorrow is an example of that. Sometimes what you want with your soul is direct justice and, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, all of those things are definitely accurate. That's an accurate read.
Well, I think that's all, like really tied to the very recent protest culture and like that pro-democracy movements where people were literally dying in the streets to try to, you know, bring democracy to the country. And that's in very recent memory. Yeah, Philly Joanne, you mentioned Youth of May. Like this sort of mass protest is very fresh in people's memories, and it's very important to South Korean culture. And so there's like this underlying distrust of authority, the government that is just there. It's like baked into everything. Abdul mentioned, going back to the earlier question about like mothers bending their children, which is a really great point. Regarding the high rates of child abandonment in dramas, there is a growing body of literature on social factors that led to very notable rates of children being taken away from their mothers in Korean society, such as unintended consequences of the citizenship law, questionable incentive systems and social norms, etc. Basically, a lot of Korean women are being separated from children even when they don't want to be. I would say there's also a history going back, I think, to the 80s of not only international adoption of Korean babies and abandonment of Korean babies for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned, but also just like poverty, you know, just like in the 80s, there was, and 70s, 80s, there was just a huge, like just severe poverty. And like from the post-war years on until I think the late 80s, when economically the country started doing much better.
Yeah, and the last ones that I want to read out is Severa says, waiting till the last episode for the I Like You and not getting any satisfying physical contact, just happy staring. I don't always mind that, but sometimes you have stories that do it and you've been wanting the leads to like have like a proper something, anything, just like have a second where I can see that you guys are going to have like a happy life together and you don't get it. That is very unsatisfying. Ruenica does this, gives us this. Why does the Car of Doom, waiting by the corner to unalive the lead's parents, always successfully do so? Her gripe is like with how impractical it is that the car needs to be like running at a certain speed to always make absolutely the death kill. It's never just a slight bump. It's never them turning slowly the corner and just like gently grazing anyone. Yeah, I mean, I get your frustration there. Abdul had sent in a question that was, I thought we all thought was really great. So I'm just gonna read that out. How do the more progressive K-drama writers balance countering existing problematic narratives in society and are appealing to audiences outside the traditional viewer, and also versus the risk of offending or losing the traditional viewer? I don't know how they managed to do it, but they managed to do it. They are always like offending somebody. I think you can never please
But it's
anyone.
also about the platform on which the drama is available, right? Like if
That's
it's,
true.
for example, a Netflix original, then you already understand that they will not
Yes.
tell a traditional sort of broadcast TV drama story. Whereas,
And I would argue that they don't always they do often offend people.
Yeah.
I mean, there are often
they just choose to
controversies.
go with
Yeah.
it sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, so long as they have the money coming in.
Right. And being on the streaming platform gives you that freedom of like, okay, you already got paid for this. And you got a lot of international money for it. For example, you got licensing fees. So you can kind of bear the brunt of that kind of criticism better than, shows could 15 years ago, for example, or 10 years ago when they were on the big three terrestrial networks, which were way more strict in terms of what you could actually portray on television, more strict even than cable. Cable was a little looser. Streaming is like way more loose, but like they would cancel things. They would get rid of things. I remember it was like the early 2010s when I first started watching K-drama. There was a gay couple in a family drama, which was already like, it was a weekend drama. So it's a more conservative audience. And the writer did not apologize, I don't think, but the network might have apologized, or like there was an apology made because people were really angry about the inclusion of that plot line. And I don't think that you would see that. I mean, time has passed and things have changed in like South Korean society, but I also think that like the response you get for something that's airing on terrestrial TV versus what's, on Netflix is going to be very different. And so like the people who want to do more daring things, like we talked about DP, that would never have gotten made on like a regular TV channel because it's undermining even the idea of mandatory military service for men.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then you have, for example, you have a drama like Extraordinary Attorney Woo, which was rejected by one of the broadcast channels, and it was picked up by the smaller cable channels.
Just like
ANA.
this like educational channel of all things. They don't even have dramas on it usually. Yeah. And it blew up beyond their wildest expectations. And I don't think that they expected a lot of the criticism that they ended up getting, not just the love.
The next one is, what is the actual statistical, so this is by Polly Favor, what is the actual statistical likelihood of being mowed down by a truck of doom in Korea? Because she's planning a trip and thinking it may be prudent to choose one side of the road and just stay there. You can always fly back next time to do the other side.
Well, you know what? If you were going from from the UK or something, you would probably be at a higher risk because we drive on the other side. So you would be looking the wrong way. So basically, don't be British. Or if you are, look the opposite way to which way you're usually looking.
I
mean, it's a real thing. That actually happened to me when I came back from... I was living abroad
for sure.
for a year. And when I came back, it was in Egypt. I was in Egypt for a year. And I was trying to cross the road after I came home. I just couldn't, I froze. I actually froze. I couldn't figure out which way I was meant to look. So it can happen. It can happen.
Next one. Weejins says, I can't tell the person I love and am in a relationship with that I am ill, running out of money, struggling at work, because I don't want them to worry. That's like, why is that a thing?
Well, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about like not having the conversations that you need to have, right?
Enable idiocy, all of that.
Just One More Episode asks, why do the lead couple always have to have a childhood backstory? Excellent question. We've been asking that since episode 1. And that's point.
Yes.
Another one for the Car of Doom. Does the bus or car of doom come as a way of showing physical affection or just physical touch from Peter the Dumbo?
Skinship with a truck.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're talking not about the car of doom, but the car of near doom, which is like when the car comes
And they
close.
slap their hands on the hood.
I know. I mean, I think this is referencing the trope where like a car comes really close and the male lead or the female lead grabs the other person and like swings them over to the other side to save their life. And it's an excuse for them to embrace. I think this is what they're referencing.
That's what it meant, huh?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I thought they were talking about like emotional contact with a car hood.
Me too.
I was like, why is she even putting her hands on the hood of the car? I'm so confused. Okay, we cleared that one up.
And finally, SG Wordy asked, why does long distance calling not exist in K-dramas? That's like within long distance relationships. They just can't happen because nobody can do long distance calling. Video doesn't exist.
I still hate, what is it, the end of Kim Samsun? I just really didn't like it.
Oh, yes.
Like, what? It was so...
Yes. It's this like separation trope. It's the trope of like, we can't have the conversation because then the drama will end too soon. And the murders, SG Wordy said, why do rom-coms got to have so many murders? I guess because the in-laws aren't as much of a problem anymore. So now you've got to have murders to bring conflict.
Also, South Korea has an obsession with serial killers. Like, at one point, they just didn't have any serial killers. Like, as in, like, the police refused to accept that serial killing was a thing in South Korea. It was like a political statement. You could not identify, even if somebody was like, there is a pattern here. The guy seems to stab in exactly the same way. And it's like, no. They're all copycats.
Wasn't it the Gyeonggi Nambu kiss was the first
in the
recorded
70s?
one?
Yeah.
Which comes up in a whole bunch of dramas, like
Memories of Murder,
Signal,
Bong Joon-ho's Memories of Murder, which is a movie, but that was kind of the first big
that's right,
representation of it in media. And then it's mentioned in Signal. Recently got solved, by the way. They found him.
I read about that
during the run up to the Oscars for Parasite, actually. So Bong Joon-ho actually gave an interview about it. It's interesting.
Wow.
Oh,
interesting.
I like your comment, Abdul. Yeah.
All of us stopped to read it.
There's a really good Bong Joon-ho video on why they use serial killers, because since they're effectively a gunless society, they need to show psychopaths that use knives because they need to be crazy enough to get in someone's face and stab them.
That's true.
Good point. I would say Americans are also extremely obsessed with serial killers. Who knows why? Actually, I do know why.
I mean, they make good story.
You're wrong about, if you like that podcast, recently had Michael Hobbs, who had left the show. He came back to talk to Sarah about serial killers, and it's a great episode. And if you're sad about him leaving, he came for this episode. But if you're sad about him leaving, as I am, go listen to that because it's a great episode. And it talks about this whole idea of like why we inflate the serial killer numbers so much and like why we're so fascinated with them as Americans.
Excellent.
So that's my second podcast recommendation of the day,
which is called You're Wrong About. She was not saying I'm wrong
sure
about
everybody
something.
has heard of You're Wrong About at this point.
It's extremely popular, but if you haven't heard of it, that's what it's called.
Yeah, I'm just checking if you've missed out any comments to answer. Department store collapse. Catherine, you're right. It also came up in what was that one called? Just Between Lovers.
Between Lovers, also known as Rain or Shine. That did a really good job. It was also part of the plot line of Reply 1997.
Yes, I forgot that. You're right. And did we miss any others? Oh, Joe says, when will K-dramas ditch the second male lead love triangle and just have a threesome? That's, I would not be averse in certain cases. Because you just don't want to let the second lead go. Yeah. Okay. I think we covered all of them. Guys, this was so
thank
much
you
fun.
for spending your Sunday morning or your Sunday afternoon or evening or whatever the time of day is for you with us. We really appreciate it. Sorry it was so long, but that's kind of on brand
You're
for
not
us.
actually sorry.
No.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yes. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I have to pray.
Yes.
That's why we have to go right now. So-
I have to feed my dogs. They have
Right.
been.
We actually have family visiting from out of town, and I was supposed to go see them like an hour ago.
I thought you were
so
going to say out of space, and you said...
I don't actually have family in space. That's the one continent that I don't have family on.
So thank you, Abdul. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Nandamisha. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Joe. Thank you guys for sticking with us for so many hours. I'm pretty sure we are
and for
at
so
the
many
third
years.
one. And for so many years.
However
Yes.
many years you spent with us, even a few months. We love you, and we can do this because you all are such a lovely community for us, and we really appreciate all
That's true.
things
And
that
to
you send
those
us.
who didn't make it, who are listening to the replay, we missed you, and we're really glad that you are at least able to join us. I can't speak
In the
English
future.
anymore. In the future, there you go.
Because this is a time travel. Time travel. The genre of today is a time travel.
My
thriller.
favorite genre, as we all know.
Yes.
Okay. Have an excellent Sunday, everyone. I'm gonna go feed my dogs now.
Yay, bye.
Bye.
하염없이 비가 내려 두 뺨 위로 이렇게 맑은데 차라리 빗물이라고 불러내면 마음 편할 텐데 그래 나도 언젠간 너처럼 다 잊을 게 처음부터 우린 없었던 일 하염없이 비가 내려 두 뺨 위로 다 다른 너와 내 favorite cafe 커피 향에 사랑을 하고 사랑을 받았었던 추억들